والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. So, in our today's program, Brilliant Books for Brilliant Minds, we're going to be looking at the book which you see on your screen called Boundaries. When to say yes, how to say no, to take control of your life, by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend. Now, these two authors, both of them are, between them, they have maybe 5 decades of experience dealing with family relationship problems. So, and also these two, all of their books, they are very, very Bible-heavy books. Now, remember that our Prophet ﷺ told us that the way we deal with scriptural text from the previous nations, the Bible, the Torah, the Prophet ﷺ said, do not confirm them nor deny them with regards to those things which do not go against the Quran and which are not confirmed by the Quran. If they are confirmed by the Quran, alhamdulillah, we believe in that. If they are rejected by the Quran, we do not believe in that. And if it's just extra information, then basically you can listen to them as background information, coloring in the gaps, but we do not rely on that as the basis for any rulings or any type of beliefs. So in this book, on every page, you will probably find a verse, if not on every other page of the Bible. Now, the book is organized, as you can see, the table of contents on the screen, that a day in a boundaryless life. What does it look like when a person does not have any boundaries? So, inshallah, I'd like to request sisters upstairs, if we can, inshallah, have kids or anybody that wants to have a talk, have a conversation, please go into the side rooms. We are very blessed to have plenty of spaces for different purposes. The main prayer halls downstairs and upstairs is only for listening, praying, making dhikr, reading Quran quietly. So inshallah, please, if we can get everyone's cooperation, we'd really appreciate it. So a boundaryless day looks like a person often feeling overwhelmed because they don't feel like saying no. Everyone comes up to them and says, hey, can you do this for me? Hey, can you do that for me? Hey, can you do this for me? One of my teachers, he actually did a course on like time management and prioritization and stuff. And he said that sometimes what happens is that someone has a monkey on their back and they pass by you and they take that monkey off their back and they put it on your back and walk away free. So you have to, if you don't have boundaries, they will be like, okay, this guy never says no, so let's put it on them. And you will get piled on and piled on and piled on until you start to feel like, angry, but what can you say? You feel abused, but what can you say? Without clear boundaries, individuals take on too many responsibilities and allow others to dictate their lives. You have something to do, but somebody else came and just gave something to you, and all of a sudden you couldn't do what you were wanting to do or planning to do even. So a lack of boundaries leads to resentment, exhaustion, and a loss of identity. You don't know who you are. You're like, man, what am I doing here? Like, I really need to be somewhere else. Maybe my family, one of the common things that happens is masjid volunteers, they are in the masjid until late at night doing stuff while their family is missing them in essential programs. There are many people, for example, who are very heavily involved, too heavily involved. They don't go to like social programs with their family. They tell them, you just go, I'm busy at the masjid. And it just keeps getting piled on and on and on until as soon as this person gets a chance to get out, what ends up happening is they get out and they never ever look back. And this is not a good outcome, right? Ideally, do little bit and do it, keep doing it. Keep a balance, but don't turn back and say never again, Or also, don't do so much that you get overloaded with it. The second chapter, he says, what does a boundary look like? He says, boundaries define what belongs to us and what does not. He says, think about, your fence in your backyard or in your side yard. You have a fence. It means here, this is my realm. Over there is your realm. So he says that when it comes to boundaries in relationships, there are some which are physical boundaries. Who could be in your physical space? If you think about it, some people have a bad habit that when they talk to you, they get really close to your face. Anybody ever experienced that? If you do that, please stop doing that, okay? I'm not going to mention any names here. But they get really close to your face. Like they are trying to make a point and they're really enthusiastic, but they're like right here. I'm like, okay, brother, I get you. I hear you, So that's an example of physical boundary violation. Like somebody, think about this. If somebody had like a big 18-wheeler truck and they brought it and they parked it right on the other side of your fence, even though they're not literally touching you right now, but it's too close for comfort sometimes. Also, another boundary is, for example, somebody touching you when you don't want them to touch you, or in a place where they don't want you to touch, you don't want to be touched. So this is an example of a physical boundary. Then there's emotional boundaries. Taking responsibility for your own emotions and not others. Like, for example, if you feel upset over something, I don't necessarily have to feel upset over that as well. You have your boundaries, I have my boundaries. I can feel upset or happy over something, and we're not the same person, right? So think about that fence. Some people, they expect that other people must feel what I am feeling. And that's not the case. Until you convince them, that's not going to happen. Also, mental boundaries. Can anybody think of a mental boundary? So, when somebody has an idea, and they think it's a really good idea, and if you don't think it's a good idea, then you are a bad person, or you are a bad friend. This is a mental boundary, meaning I have the freedom to have my own position about your idea. If I like it, alhamdulillah. If I don't like it, don't blame me. Maybe you can convince me, but that's your idea. You can't expect me to see it the way you are seeing it. A lot of people, they expect, for example, family members. There might be someone who doesn't have a good concept of boundaries in a family, and they will expect that their spouse must see eye to eye on everything the way they see it. And that is a violation, because we'll talk about that. He has a chapter on that. And he says that, look, the two spouses, they are not the same person after they get married. They are still two unique individuals. They are still two unique individuals. If you don't understand that, then you don't understand the concept of boundaries. And you would not feel comfortable if someone else made you do that. That you must see the way I see things. Then there are spiritual boundaries. Spiritual boundaries are your right to have your own experience, in your ibadah, in your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So then he says there are 4 types of people that are people that have problems with boundaries. So he says number 1 is compliance. The compliant person says yes to everything. They don't know how to say no. And they keep taking on and on and on because they're afraid that if I say no, you're not going to be my friend anymore. So this is a compliant person. And you can imagine how this person is going to be in trouble very soon, because they say yes to anything and everything that their friends want to do. They say, yeah, come on. Yeah, okay, yeah, let's go. And they just don't have a sense of, okay, this is where I stop. You want to go, you can go, but I'm not going to go any further. So think about, somebody wanting to go home, but friends say, let's stay a little longer. Maybe a little longer is okay, but maybe hours and hours while this person's family is waiting for them, they have a job to get to, and all of these type of things. So compliance, a person who is afraid to say no because they are afraid that they might lose a friend. Then you have the avoidance. The avoiding person refuses to ask for help or express needs. Okay? Like they say, if you don't like it, then say no. So this person, he's not happy with what you're doing to them, but they don't tell you that, hey, what you just did, I didn't like that. It's a very good idea to take that person to the side in a respectful way and tell them, hey, I'm your friend and I really like you and I, really, enjoy the time, but I just want to let you know, this joke that you made, it was offensive to me. And I would appreciate if you don't make those type of jokes anymore. Or, from now on, I would appreciate if you don't do such and such behavior. Whatever it is, you need to let them know. But a person who has a problem in their boundaries is one of these, which is the avoiding person who doesn't actually come out and express what needs to be expressed. Number 3, these are the controllers. The controllers are the people who want to control other people. So they violate other people's boundaries, and as if they own them, like a slave owner, saying, you don't belong to yourself, you belong to me. If I tell you to do this, I expect you to do this. And again, is there anyone in this world who has the right to do this to you? What do you think? Your parents have a right to do this to you? Not even your parents. Not even your parents can control you. What is that? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, they actually have a chapter that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from them they say God, even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us free will. And He has given us the ability to choose. He says, I will tell you what the right way is. I will send you prophets to tell you that this is the right way. I will tell you that if you go this way, what is at the end of this way? What is at the end of that way? But you, at the end of the day, you make your own choice and you will be responsible for the consequences of your choice. Okay? So, controllers, there are controllers among us for sure. Sometimes the controller can be a child in a family. They basically have learned some tantrums that if they throw that, then everyone will do exactly what they want them to do. They can get their parents to get them anything they want. And, there are controllers of all types and all ages. Be careful about them. Number 4 are the non-responsives, the people who ignore others' needs and fail to show empathy. Okay? They don't understand that, look, if I expect someone to do something, that person also has a life. And if anybody ever tells them that, hey, this is not, they act like they didn't even hear this and they continue to do their own behavior. So these type of people, what do you do with them? You become non-responsive to them. That's what ends up happening when people realize these people get left alone, and they are obviously not very happy about that. Now, they say, explain how boundaries are developed. They say that from 0 to 5 years of age, the kids, the babies, they learn trust and security from their caregivers. They learn what is safe space. And whenever a kid feels afraid, they run to those who they feel safe with, like their parents. And whenever a stranger comes in front of them, they start crying or something like that. That's somebody that understands, okay, my safety is here, and that's danger zone. If I ever feel danger, go to safety. That's mom and dad. Then, from the age of 5 to 10 years old, they're starting to learn independence. They're starting to learn independence, and they're starting to learn, if they are learning properly, they will learn where someone can touch them. They will learn where someone cannot touch them. They will learn, what kind of gifts they can accept from their friends, what kind of gifts they can give to their friends, money exchange, all of these type of things, they are happening. Then from the age of 10 to 18, they are really establishing identity and decision-making skills. And again, this is what should happen. It doesn't always happen because of the upbringing. Sometimes they don't learn what they are supposed to learn at the proper time, and that's when might be you have someone 18 years old but acts like a 12-year-old. And sometimes you have a 12-year-old that acts like an 18-year-old. That's because of the upbringing and the environment they got to learn about these type of issues. And then adulthood onwards, 18 plus, they are applying personal boundaries in relationships, work, and faith. If they know them and they understand them, then they will apply them. Sometimes we have adults who don't understand personal boundaries for themselves or for others, and they either end up getting abused or they abuse other people until somebody says, hey, that's it. Now, the next part, he talks about the 10 laws of boundaries, the 10 laws of boundaries, and this is a very important part. I'll go through them quickly, inshallah. He says, number one, the law of sowing and reaping. The law of sowing and reaping. What does this law say? You reap what you sow. Okay, so he says an example of this is, if a parent gives their child some money, and this child goes and spends that money wastefully, then they come home and they ask for money again, what should the parents say? The parents should say that I gave you this money to last 2 weeks and you ran out for 2 days, in 2 days. Now, if the parent says, okay, well, here's another set of money, then this child did not reap what he sowed. Okay? You gave them the wrong idea that your mistakes have no negative consequences. And as a result, this kid will not learn a lesson, and they will do it again. But if you tell them, well, I told you that this money is for 2 weeks, you spent it in 2 days. So from now on, you need to either sell some of your toys, you need to maybe babysit for someone, if that's allowed in your family or whatever, or you need to actually just survive with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and water and fasting for the next remainder of the 2 weeks, and then you will get your money once we reach that point. If you do that once, if you do that twice, that kid will learn that they need to manage their money. That goes for everything else. We were talking about a few days ago about kids making noise in the masjid during salah time. If the parents don't give any consequences to them, then that kid will do it again. If the parents give them consequences, then the kids will learn that lesson and they'll say, okay, we've been told the boundary of the masjid is you can play and make noise when no one is praying, but when salah is going on, we're supposed to sit quietly or join the prayer. If that doesn't happen, he says the law of reaping and sowing, reap what you sow. If you break that law, you will have negative consequences. If you don't allow someone to, if someone comes to you saying, hey man, I had this deadline, I needed to do this, I have this thing to deliver tomorrow morning, and I didn't finish it. Okay, what were you doing? He says, there was this new movie that came out, this new TV show came out, and I just kept, it was so good, 1 episode, 2 episodes, 3 episodes. Now, if you step in and save this guy, maybe you could do that one time, but if this keeps happening, then this person is not learning from their mistakes. So you need to let them reap what they have sown themselves. One time when they get thrown to the street because they did not fulfill their responsibility, it will teach them a strong lesson. Number 2, it says the law of responsibility, which is everyone is responsible for their own lives, their own feelings, and their own actions. You are not responsible for making me happy. I am responsible for making me happy. You are not responsible for doing my work. I am responsible for doing my work. You are not responsible for knowing my boundaries. I am responsible for knowing my boundaries and let you know, hey, I don't like that. No one else is going to come and save us. We are supposed to be the one Be the change that you want to see, right? So you are supposed to take that initiative and say, it's my responsibility, I got to take it. If you don't allow people to take that responsibility, they will remain dependent on you. Number 3, the law of power. The law of power says power cannot change others. People cannot change others, but they can change themselves. Okay? So, to give you a very simplistic example, if someone is sitting next to you and they keep poking you, you may not have the power. In most cases, you do not have the power to get them to move up and move away. But what power do you have? You get up and move away. Okay? So if you apply that to relationships, you cannot change other people, but you can change yourself. Maybe your reaction is what needs to change, and that actually may change the other person if they're ever going to change. But if you think that you're just going to sit back and relax and they need to change, it will not happen. Number 4 is the law of respect, which is the respecting others' boundaries helps ensure your own are respected. If you don't respect other people's boundaries, other people will not respect your boundaries. Number 5, the law of motivation, which means true giving should come from love and joy and not guilt, fear, or obligation. Remember, I shared with you the example a few days ago in our fiqh class that there was a fundraiser where the fundraiser, he said, Brother Amjad, how much are you going to give today? So Brother Amjad is like looking left and right. All of his friends are sitting there. He's embarrassed to say, like, I don't feel comfortable giving right now, or I don't even believe in your cause. I just came here for the food or whatever. But out of embarrassment, Brother Amjad says, I'll give $1,000. Okay? So the law of motivation says that people should give if they're giving their time, if they're giving their money, if they're giving their skill, whatever it is that they're giving, they should love it. They should give it because they want to give it. Not because they're afraid they will feel guilty, or they are afraid of something, or they feel an obligation to give. No, it should be done out of their own motivation. Number 6, the law of evaluation, which is that boundaries may hurt someone temporarily, but they do not cause harm. Okay, so if it's a coworker that's violating your boundaries, after you read this book, you go and you tell them, hey, Todd or Mike, I want to let you know that I do not like it when you open my lunchbox and eat my food. And Mike is going to be so upset. He's like, man, what kind of a friend are you? I thought we were buddies. I thought everything was okay, and I really thought you were a good friend. He will huff and puff at you. But if you stick to your boundary and say, look, Mike, we are still friends, but you can't do this. It will take them some time, but they will come around. It will cause some temporary discomfort, but they will come around. And of course, these are chapters on boundaries with your friends, boundaries with your family, boundaries with your spouses. You can imagine like how difficult it could be to establish a boundary with your spouse and tell them, hey, look, everything is good, but this is not good for me. I don't like this. So think about in-laws. It will cause short-term discomfort, but you setting your boundary does not hurt anyone. As much as they might try to portray that, saying you are hurting me by doing this and this. See, no, I'm only telling you this is my fence. Don't come into this side. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm just telling you, you don't do anything to me. Number 7 is the law of proactivity, which means stop playing the victim card and take control of your own life. Be proactive. Don't be reactive. Be proactive. It's easy to say, well, everybody did this to me and people came and they took my money and this and that. Well, whatever happened, happened. You need to take control of your life and start standing up and saying, I will not allow it to happen anymore. Whatever you need to do, you need to do. Number 8, the law of envy. The law of envy says that, so people who are envious, what is their focus? Their focus is on what other people have. So he says that the law of envy is stop being envious of what others have and instead take action towards making your own. Take action towards achieving your own personal goals. You're like, oh, this person has this and that. That's not going to help you in any way. Rather, make your own personal goal. What do you need to do to get to that point and start working towards that? Do we have any IT support here? Okay, inshallah, they're watch and they will turn on. There's no sound upstairs, so inshallah, brothers can turn on that sound. In the meanwhile, maybe you can open the door over there. Number 9 is the law of activity, which means that people must actively pursue change, and you don't just sit back and wait for things to get better. You have to do something to make it better. You can't say, well, yeah, times are bad. What are you going to do about it? You have to stand up. You have to do something. Think about right now, there are lots of changes going on in the country. If you don't like it, it's not going to stop on its own. Somebody has to get up and somebody has to do something. Somebody has to say something. Somebody has to give some pressure in order to say, hey, this is not good. So then he talks about applying boundaries to different areas of your life, your family, your friends, your spouse, your children. So for example, he says an example of no boundaries or bad boundaries between spouses is that one spouse makes all the decisions. One spouse, if you are not the spouse that makes all the decisions, is that a place where you want to be? Do you want to be in a marriage where you don't make any decision? Your spouse does. You don't want to be that person. None of us want to be. But sometimes we might be the person who expect to make all the decisions and everybody must listen and obey. So it's not a good place for us to put other people in. Also, unspoken resentment due to a lack of clear boundaries. So one spouse feels like, man, I'm not in control. Like, I feel abused. And over the years, resentment is building up. With regards to friends, you should be able to say no without feeling guilty. If your friend says at 4 a.m. in the morning, calls you and says, hey, let's go hiking. If you don't want to go hiking at 4 a.m., you should be able to say no without feeling any guilt, and the friend should not be putting guilt trips on you. If they are, they don't understand your boundaries. I yelled at a friend of mine a few days ago. He called me 3 times in a row. So I picked up, I said, somebody better be dying right now. You called me 3 times in a row. It must be like a real life and death emergency, and I should be able to do something to save that dying person. And he said, oh, I just was calling to give you an update. I told him, don't do that again, because multiple repeated calls, it means something. If you don't understand that, then you're going to, someday, the story of the crying wolf, that's going to happen. All right, boundaries with children. So consequences for actions without overprotecting. So a lot of parents, they have this tendency to not let their kids suffer from any consequences of their mistakes. And this is not good because it tells those children a wrong message, which is no matter what mistake you made, your parents will always be there with a safety net to catch you when you fall. Sometimes you have to let them fall and tell them, well, this is the mistake that you made. You made a bad choice, and this is the result of that. Age-appropriate independence. So as they are different ages, you need to give them certain amount of independence according to what is appropriate for their age, and you can find guidance for that. Also, emotional regulation by allowing kids to express feelings safely. They should be able to tell you their feelings without you shutting them down. Workplace boundaries. I'm going to go through them quickly and go to some of the good stuff. Okay, so he says there's a section on boundaries in digital life. Then he says resistance to boundaries. When you start setting boundaries, some people are going to say, how could you do this to me? I thought I was your best friend. That's okay. You can again tell them that, look, I am not trying to hurt you, but what you are doing is hurting me, and I want to make sure that we understand that this is not okay. They will guilt trip you. I mean, one of the conversations I often have with people is that they have in-laws who don't have a sense of boundary. In-laws coming in, doing stuff, saying stuff, making decisions for them as if that, there should be no problem. We are all one family. And you have to tell them. Now, when you tell your in-law, whether it's your mother-in-law or daughter-in-law or brother-in-law or father, whoever, if you tell them, hey, we're good, but this that you just did, it's not acceptable to me. Initially, they'll be like, how disrespectful you are. You want to break up this family. You're so selfish. They will accuse you of being selfish. But just listen to that and say, all of that, if that's how you feel, I understand. But this boundary will not be crossed anymore. Once you do that once or twice, they will understand. And actually, when they see that, okay, you're really firm, they will actually start to respect your boundaries. Anger, they will express anger. They will express withdrawal. So sometimes they might start talking to you and giving you silent treatment. But again, that's fine. If this person is okay and happy to abuse you, you should be happy to let them stop abusing you. And if they don't want to talk to you, you have many more friends to go and find. Expect resistance, but hold firm. So in the end, I would say that, again, since I read this book, almost every other counseling person that came to me for counseling, I felt the need to tell them, hey, you need to read this book. Because this is almost all relationship problems have something to do with boundaries. And if you set them, you understand them, you don't violate other people's boundaries, it will help to improve your relationships, and it will allow you to live a healthier life emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, where you can be yourself and other people can be themselves. So I would highly recommend this book. And remember the thing I said about all the biblical verses. Generally speaking, most good knowledge, you will find roots of it in the Quran and Sunnah as well, as you would find it in other places. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. Anybody have any questions or comments? Okay, جزاكم الله خير. السلام عليكم. وإياكم.